exactly. All right, we're back, and we're on the internet.
All right, internet.
We're here. Okay, so let's ask some of the questions that people wrote in. If you hosted a Republican debate, what would you ask them? Oh, good question.
Well,
What would you ask them, Tom?
I'm frankly not that interested in what any of them have to say.
They say the same thing. It's amazing the way they are in such lockstep. I feel like the crowd wants them all to merge into one. They're like they don't like anything in particular, but they like an angry mob.
Right. Yeah. This is what I was trying to get at about the fact that they booed the gay soldier, they applauded the death penalty, and they applauded the 30-year-old dying. We've seen this before. Right, this is conservative populism with a mob mentality. This is what H.L. Mencken was writing about with the Scopes monkey trial. And the problem with this is that we get a situation where they play the lowest common denominator. I would ask them, how come none of you had the guts to stand up and correct the crowd for booing the gay soldier?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's what I want to know.
Very good, yeah. Not one of them, you know, I've never once seen a soldier in a situation like that where every candidate didn't immediately say, we thank you for your service.
Right.
Nobody thanked him for
it. Polish the lapel, flag pelt.
Right.
You know, Santorum's answer to him was, I don't think there should be any sex in the military, which I thought, well, that'd be the end of all wars, wouldn't it? Because no men would sign up to kill anybody else.
No,
because
it's a lot of...
Or maybe he just should have said there should be no Santorum in the military.
You know what I'd ask him, and it's a question for every politician, is there any principle you believe in, that's more important than getting reelected?
Right.
Right.
That's a great question.
That is a good
question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Don't hook them up to the lie detector when they answer that one. What should we do about Admiral Mullen's assertion that Pakistani's intelligence service is supporting the Haqqani terrorist network? Boy, Rick Perry was all thumbs last night when he tried to talk about the Pakistani country, otherwise known as Pakistan. This guy, you know,
to actually get somebody who's like George W. Bush but less articulate. Right. I never thought I'd see the day.
No,
I mean that's.
He is the George Bush robot from the Disney Hall of Shitty Presidents. He really is.
I want to say
that might mean two terms.
I want to say something about Mullen, though. He's retiring later next week. If anyone is responsible for Don't Ask, Don't Tell being repealed, it's Mike Mullen, who had the guts to stand up and said, this is a question of morality. And, you shouldn't lie about who you are. He also,
parents who worked in Hollywood.
He also had a tough day yesterday because it is, both of his parents were agents, movie agents.
Right. So he grew
up in the Valley.
Military.
But,
well, he wasn't raised with bigotry toward gays and lesbians.
Right.
But
because of this town that is a lot more tolerant than much of the rest of the country, with the exception of Iowa, where you can get gay married. And you can't in California.
Right.
It's just very sad. But Mullen spent a lot of years trying to believe that the ISI was doing the right thing. And he had to say yesterday what I believe is the truth, which is they're bifurcated. Sometimes they're with us, and other times they're harboring this group, particularly the Haqqani network, which is attacking Pakistani Muslims in Pakistan, as well as mostly going against Americans in Afghanistan.
Wouldn't you love to know how long they were harboring bin Laden? Like what the real connection was?
There's a story.
The whole time.
We will learn that story someday.
And you know, this is so typical. When a guy's about to retire, that's when you get the truth. I've seen it so many times just on this show. You know, when they're in office, they're very careful. The second they get out of office, it's like the only way you can get the truth is when people can't get fired or shouted down anymore coming back.
Leon Panetta was there too. I think the truth in this case was that the Haqqani network was behind the attack in Kabul last week, and that's what they said, and they have proof of that.
They've been behind a lot of other stuff, and they never said it.
that hasn't been denied. I don't think that's fair. The
extent
of this isn't.
He didn't come out like this before. If he wasn't retiring, he wouldn't have.
You were the chairwoman. You were the chairwoman of the Intelligence Committee. Is that right? Or what was the?
I was the ranking Democrat.
The ranking Democrat of the. So now that a number of years have passed, what could you tell us tonight that you haven't been able to tell us about whether it's bin Laden, 9/11, whatever?
Well, I can tell you that
we're only on the internet. We're off the air right now.
I can tell you that the intelligence on Iraq was wrong. That's for sure. But I didn't know that at the time. I know we know that.
But tell us something that seriously that you can, that without breaking the law, but you could,
Thank
that
you for
you
that.
think that we need to know because we'd be better voters if we had information,
Well,
because ignorance is a
One thing I can
bad
tell
place to
you
be.
is that it has been a struggle in Congress to get adequately briefed by the administration. And
This
in Bush,
administration.
well, the first Bush administration was terrible on this.
Mm-hmm.
We forced them to improve. This administration's doing better, but
Mm-hmm.
Congress is not able to provide the oversight we need. We need to protect the civil liberties of Americans. That is absolutely critical. And there's no, you know, security and liberty are not a zero-sum game. You either get more of both or less of both. And I'm voting for more of both.
Well,
And
that's-
we really have to. Congress has to
Not
be
always.
active.
That's not always true. I mean, there are cases where we did sacrifice people's liberty, and we did get security during the Cold War. I mean, come on, we propped up a lot of regimes, and if we hadn't, we probably would not have been as secure as we were.
Right, and the problem is, I don't think we made the adjustment from the Cold War of we still think somehow that the enemy of our enemy is our friend, and it's not true. And we've screwed up
it is
time
true.
and time again. In the Cold War, it was a rational thing to think. But now there's no excuse for it anymore. We keep getting in trouble by things.
Well, I think
Well-
we got in some trouble in the Cold War, too. I mean,
Absolutely.
the Army McCarthy hearings, I thought
Yeah,
that,
of course.
that was my
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of things went wrong there, and we should learn some lessons.
And because we were the ones who originally supported
Well-
bin Laden and the Mujahideen, because the Soviet Union was our enemy, they were our friends. We funded and trained that operation.
Let me tell you,
And then we wouldn't build schools. We'd give them
There were
rocket
mistakes
Well,
made in the
we
Cold
made a lot of mistakes.
Mistakes made in the Cold War, but you know what? If today's crowd of Republicans was around back then, the world would be over. Because I've heard them say that they are against the policy of containment. Because you know that's a little too pussifying.
Yeah.
We should actually confront them. We should have blown
Reagan
them up.
and Goldwater
What-
would both be called rhinos today. That's how crazy things are.
Absolutely.
Well, you know
That's
who
right.
was terrific on this stuff was Dwight Eisenhower. Look back at
Absolutely.
him.
Yeah,
Because
course,
he had actually been to war.
Right.
He actually had to struggle
Yes.
knowing on the night before D-Day that X thousands of his soldiers
Right.
were going to march right into their deaths. And when you've seen that and you've been there, and these guys, the Cheneys with their 5 deferments, these Republicans who never served,
Rick
never
Santorum.
Santorum, never saw war,
No.
never saw service, but they're willing to send the children of the poor to go fight these
Well-
battles. This is really
Well, we made a decision as a country to end the draft, which wasn't operated in a very fair way either. But we have some great military heroes now, like David Petraeus,
and that very buff gay soldier on the video.
and the very buff gay soldier.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming. Thank you.
That's fair.
Okay.